Call this meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. My name is Ray Bubb. I'm the current chairman of the Pownal Fire District No. 2 water system. Murray's, good to see you. Murray's the previous water system owner. We have an honored guest tonight, our representative Bill Botso, who has to jump in his car and drive to Montpelier for the last 2 weeks of the session. So I'm going to, for two reasons, exercise chairman's discretion and change the order of the agenda, which was published. The first thing that I want to say is this is a meeting, a monthly, regularly scheduled monthly meeting of the Pownal Fire District No. 2 Prudential Board. The meetings of this municipality and all municipalities are governed under the Vermont State Open Meetings Laws, and we welcome your attendance. But just by coincidence and very helpfully, we get a monthly magazine from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and it's called, and it has a feature called Ask the League, and this month, May 2015, is Ask the League about open meeting laws, frequently asked questions, and it's answered by the League's legal and research staff. So just for these meetings that are conducted in public, but are not meetings of the public. So it depends on how much discussion we have. We welcome all your comments, but if people get off topic or start to dominate and talk on too long, I will slow you down. So I want to start by saying at 4 o'clock today, I got a call from Ralph Nima on my right and Luke Schellenberger, who is the CEO of the Green Lantern Group, which we've been talking with about this project. And they informed me that, and this is why I'm so glad that Bill is here, they informed me that the legislature has added on a provision in the reset bill, which is a bill about changing how renewable energy credits are distributed and other technical things about renewable energy. And they're adding, according to Luke, who has people who inform him that it's very likely this is going to pass, and it's an increase in setback from a road for solar energy projects from the current 25 feet to 75 or 100 feet. This is going to change the potential of our project because it will move the price. Since our project is still in the proposal stage and is not permitted, it will, if it is permitted, will be permitted under these rules if these rules are passed, which Bill can maybe, do you have any expertise on this particular detail?
A little bit.
May I ask, may I ask you first, I'm going to ask Ralph to describe it, then I'm going to ask you to comment because I know you got to jump in your car and drive away. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I guess the main point that I'm trying to make is the project as described is not going to happen if this law passes. And it's possible that a scaled down project could happen only north of the well in the well house, set farther back, and I want to turn it over to Ralph right now.
Thanks, Ray. So we're members of REV, R-E-V, Renewable Energy Vermont, which is the trade association of renewable energy companies and advocates and so forth around the state. And Luke lives in Waterbury, and he participates in a weekly REV call with other members of the industry. And he also, I know, has fairly frequent contact with Rebecca Ellis, who I think is the chair of the House, or is it Senate Natural?
Close, Vice Chair of the House.
Vice Chair of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee. And I think she's Waterbury-based or near there, Richmond, or...
She's one of two representatives from Waterbury.
Waterbury, okay. Thank you for filling me in on the details. But anyway, Luke has a much closer sort of day-to-day and week-to-week connection with what's going on in the legislature than I do. He wrote me an email this morning, and he said that his sources indicated that there was a very, very high likelihood that Reset was going to get some language included as one of the sort of later things being added to the bill that would increase setbacks substantially to anywhere from 75 to 100 feet from roads. That this was one of a number of different things that had been proposed that would make Reset more acceptable to local governments and to various other people who felt that that there needed to be more thought put into solar siting because it's an issue all over the state. So what that does, because of the shape of the field on 346 between the railroad track and the road, is that it very much squeezes the space where we could fit panels for an array. And as Ray said, it substantially cuts down on the size of, in terms of kilowatts, substantially cuts down on the capacity of what we could build there. And what it also does is it shrinks the size of the array down below the level that our investors are interested in, because they're telling us that they want to build large 500 kilowatt arrays which achieve certain economies of scale, have a certain level of, I guess, credit worthiness and so forth, that they're willing to invest in them. So it kind of takes it off the table for our investors for the larger scale arrays. However, it's still interesting to us as a smaller project. And so what we would like to propose, and this at this point, all that I'm basing what I'm saying on right now is a brief email from Luke this morning, and then a conversation, a three-way conversation among Luke, Ray, and myself this afternoon, I guess it was.
Late afternoon.
Late afternoon. So what it boils down to is this. We are going to propose a project that I can describe in very general terms right now, and then we have to turn it into an actual proposed or draft contract. We have to submit it to the fire district board. You have to have your lawyer, Rob Wilmington, look at it. So it has to go back through the process again. But what it would basically amount to is this, and I'm going to be as specific as I can be, but there may be details that change. So this is where we are right now with the idea. It would be a 150 kilowatt array. It would, instead of it being owned by an investor, it would be owned by us. However,
Green Lantern.
by Green Lantern Group. However, we would be willing to move it into the category of what nowadays around Vermont is typically called community solar, where individuals, households, people in this room, could actually buy into a share of the array and use it to cut down on your electric bills. There would be two ways to do this. One would be no cash up front. You buy a share that is proportionate to your own annual electric consumption. You get credits on your electric bills, and your electric bill would go down by 5%. And it would also be locked in at a level that would be guaranteed for the first 10 years, and then after that, limited in terms of the rate at which it rose. This would all be worked out in the actual contract language. So that's option one. Option number two, as an alternative, if you have the cash, you could actually buy a number of panels in the array, and then you, in your own tax filings, would be able to enjoy the investment tax credit, which is 30% of whatever you invest in the array. Plus, you would also benefit from the net metering credits, which are 19 cents a kilowatt hour. So in other words, you would become an owner, kind of like a condominium owner or something like that, of the array. And the final piece of this is that instead of, because we're talking about something much smaller, and we're talking about something that, where we're not going to own all of it, we're going to own a substantial chunk of it, but then there are going to be other owners as well who are reaping their own benefits in terms of tax credits and net metering credits. Rather than leasing it from the fire district, as we proposed, at the level we proposed, we would simply say that in exchange for being able to use the land, we would zero out the fire district's electric bill for the 20-year contract, which is currently around $4,000 a year. So the total benefit to the fire district is not what it was when we met here a month ago, when we were talking about a benefit that basically amounted to about $8,500 in terms of both the lease revenue and the reduction in the electric cost. Now we're talking about something smaller, but still something that will be very meaningful to the fire district for 20 years, which is not having to worry about your electric bill. So, you know, that's the general description of what we propose. It's still an idea. It's not even written down, you know, formally in a draft proposal or a draft contract. But all I can say is that the array that we're now envisioning would be quite a bit smaller in terms of total area. Could be at the north end of the field, and would be, because of the change in the statute, further to the west as well, so further away from the road. You can draw your own conclusions, but I believe that it would address some of the neighbor visual impact issues, and it also opens up more of the financial benefits of the project to people in the community. So that's the whole thing really in round terms.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Bill to share your thoughts about this, if you would, please.
Well, one, thank you very much for that information. I think it's a moving picture right now, because what happens is the House proposed a bill that did not have any elements on solar cited in it, while they've been taking a great deal of testimony while the bill's been in the Senate. The Senate proposal that is right now that you can read, and this sounds like it has changed since then, was an amendment that was added that would give municipalities the ability to put in screening and setback requirements, would allow that. But there was no setback numbers mentioned when I read that today. However, it's not surprising that perhaps the two bodies, or the leaders of the committees and others, are trying to work out some sort of a agreement on how they would address the situation, and perhaps that is where they're going. But I'm only basing that on the phone call you had this morning, which is new information to me of it. That's the main piece of it that I would comment on. So what I would say is that what will happen is that the Senate will bring to the Senate floor committee recommendations, and then on the floor of the Senate is open to amendments. And perhaps this is the amendment or other amendments, I don't know, that could be added to the bill. So if that happens, now you have a Senate bill that's fundamentally different than a House bill. So what happens next is they appoint a conference committee from the two bodies to work out differences and resolve what they would think the policy would be, and then that is brought to both bodies for an up and down vote, but no further amending. So that will give you a sense of what is the literal process based on what you said and based on what I've read and some conversations that are going on. I think what's happening is that people are trying to balance out a couple of pieces. Is that there's strong support in Vermont for distributed renewable energy. I think that is what people think is basically pretty good. It certainly beats buying energy that comes out of coal plants and oil-fired plants. Most everybody feels that they want to move away from carbon-based, and they also know that there are widespread economic benefits from doing so. And the economic benefits are simply that, well, the demonstration of it is that most of you may have noticed that your electric bill went down 2% last year for your CVPS. They lowered their rate or got approval for doing that. Whereas our neighboring states is going up 10% or so. So why are we moving in a different direction? And the reason has been is that there's been a strong belief in distributed renewable energy in its variety of forms. There are a lot of reasons for that, and the reason is that you save money between that and efficiency in houses, so people use electricity, and you basically do not have to build big transmission lines, which are very, very expensive. And Vermont is, we're part of a large group called ISO New England, and that group, basically we pay a proportionate share of construction throughout New England. When we lower the amount of transmission that we send, we aren't exposed to spending as much money when they're building transmission lines or big baseload power plants in the rest of New England, so it helps us there. Obviously, electric policy is somewhat complicated. It's basically any project that would come in would have to get a certificate of public good, I think, as people who research this know. And that is done through a public service board process. And in that public service board process, I believe that it's very much same criteria as the Act 250 process, but it's different people. It's more of a judicial process than Act 250, which is a little more informal. That can present barriers, but it also presents a certain kind of rectitude, to the procedures in terms of evidence and who can have the evidence and who can challenge evidence and who can be party. Is there more that you would like to ask? Or?
Well, no, but I think hearing from Ralph and hearing from you, this decision that sounds from Ralph is a little farther along than sounds from you, but you're on the floor and Ralph and Luke are not. This just puts any decision that the Pownal Fire District Number 2 Water Board puts it off, whatever, whether we have a project or whether we don't. We're not even going to know until the legislature votes on this setback and any other changes to the rules. Now, I did ask Luke, do people who have solar arrays that are 25 or 30 feet from the road, they don't have to go in and take out their panels to now have them 75? No. When you permit, or whenever you get a permit, the laws in time at that time are like grandfathered, so nobody has to go back and tear out panels. And whatever, if we go ahead with a project, then it will be administered and recognized on the laws that are in force, even if the legislature goes and changes more laws, which I'm sure they will. Yes, sir.
I would just like to make one more comment, is that I appreciate that how many people are here and how many people have an interest in a constructive conversation to try to solve what is basically a community's problem or opportunity together. And I think that even though when people may have differences or so, is that when people come together and really do try to talk and get the best ideas from each other, you usually find a way there, whatever that may be. I appreciate very much what you said, because as you said, it's not so much I'm on the floor as I'm in a different committee, the Commerce and Economic Development Committee, most of the time. And the House has not developed a position that I have been informed about on this Senate proposal. And that would need to happen. And perhaps, like I said, leadership is working on something that all parties would be comfortable to or not. But, that's where we stand.
I thank you very much. I hope you'll stay as long as you feel comfortable, but don't risk your safety in staying up late driving.
Thank you.
Okay. I neglected to introduce the members of the board: Walt Moreau, Doug Robertson, Brian Quinn, and Alex DeSamsono, and our secretary treasurer, Cindy Leonard. I have a few presentations, but less than I had. But I do still want to make these short presentations. I think the way, because everyone has come here, I think we should take the reading of the minutes, the reading of the treasurer's report, and put them at the end, or for this night only. We typically don't have an audience, and we typically start with that. So I'm going to, yes, sir.
I would like to address the issues, the leftover issues from last meeting, if we could. You guys,
You'll get that opportunity at number 8, public comment accepted from meeting attendees. If anybody wants an agenda, yes, you will have an opportunity. Agenda number, I have a few of these, and then you can pass them around. Agenda number 4 is short presentation by Board Chair Ray Bubb on the geology of the Pownal Valley as it relates to the PFD number 2 water well. This is the 1998 source evaluation report prepared by Lincoln Applied Geology of Lincoln, Vermont, and I've gone through it, and I just have I want to tell you what they found out about the geology of the well. And this is, my goal is to say that nothing on the surface is going to affect the water supply. But let me say, this is first a soil description, and this is a well number D5. They drilled 5 wells, but D5 was 10 feet away from where well D1 was drilled, which is our well, because they had to move 10 feet so they could be in a 125-foot radius in between the railroad tracks and Route 346. So here's the soils description. From 0 to 13 feet down, it's sand, fine to coarse, cobble, boulder, some silt, and a trace of clay, which they all call till. From 13 to 30 feet, there's a 17-foot deep band of silt, blue-gray, trace clay, trace gravel, fine, and it's called a confining unit. And from 30 to 42 feet, there's sand, very fine gray, some gravel, fine, and trace silt. And this is called the upper aquifer. That's a 12-foot band. From 42 to 62 feet is another clay layer, silt, gray to blue-gray, trace clay, and it's called a confining unit. From 62 to 71 feet is sand, which is very coarse and gray, some medium sand, and a trace of silt. And this 62 to 71 foot area is where our well goes down to. 71 foot, it's called dark gray phylite, P-H-Y-L-L-I-T-E bedrock. So there's 2 clay layers, and the clay layers the water-producing gravel aquifer is hydraulically separated from the surface by 2 confining layers that effectively retard groundwater flow from above. During the top hole drilling of test wells D2, D3, D4D, and D5, a confining unit was noted protecting the lower aquifer that consists of between 25 and 56 feet of gray to blue-gray compact glacially derived clay till. The hydraulic conductivity of this material was thought to be less then 0.0005 feet per day, which is 5/10,000ths of a foot per day, as compared to the field estimate of the water-bearing gravel unit, which is estimated at 1,000 to 2,000 feet per day. All right. Here's a really important point. The geology and topography of the Pownal area suggests that this deposit is thickest in the center of the valley and that it tends to pinch out toward the valley walls. This is the aquifer at the bottom. The two confining layers lie between 17 and 30 feet and 40 and 60 feet below the surface throughout the immediate area. They are both extremely dense and have a low hydraulic conductivity, 0.005 feet per day. The area is directly upgradient of well D1 and along the valley bottom ultimately supply recharge to the well. So here's the point. All of your houses that you live on the flat of the valley are over the aquifer. The aquifer isn't just a cone above the 125-foot radius. The racetrack 2.3 megawatt solar array is over the aquifer. The TAM recycling demolition plant or whatever it is over the aquifer. If you spill oil changing your oil in your car, that's over the aquifer. We're all over the aquifer, but the aquifer comes and follows the river. So it comes from Williamstown. But I think you can relax about any contamination if a solar array is put onto the water system over the well, because it's just not going to get there. That's my presentation, short presentation about 4 as to the geology of the Pownal Valley. I'm going to make a very short presentation on the structure and contents of installed solar panels. There's a lot of research that I've read about that's being done with different kinds of solar panels. And there's 2 main kinds. One is a silicon-based solar panel, which is a similar silicon, refined silicon to your cell phones and your TVs and your microwave and all these silicon wafer things. There are also, and these are somewhat thick, and a silicon-based solar panel, it is, I'm not going to bore you with this, but about 4% of the unit is the actual electricity silicon-based panel. There's a glass on top, there's a substrate of a polyvinyl chloride under it, there's another kind of plastic underneath it, there's an aluminum channel around the edge, and installed silicon-based cells pose minimal risks to human health or the environment, according to reviews conducted by the Brookhaven National Lab and the Electric Power Research Institute. The Brookhaven National Lab is a big installation owned by the Department of Energy in Upton, New York, in the middle of Long Island. They have one of those, giant circular particle accelerators, and so now everything I say is, somebody else can say something else, but I'm trying my best to give you what seems like the accurate information about solar panels. Now, there are 2 other kinds of solar panels, and they're called thin film solar panels. One uses cadmium telluride, and the other uses gallium arsenide. And these have glass, the thin film, and then more glass underneath it. Cadmium telluride, if you ate it or had it on your skin, is toxic. Cadmium is a toxic metal. But in another article, more than 63% of the cadmium telluride found in our bodies is attributed to the fertilizers used for plants, fertilizers distributed. Cadmium is a byproduct of smelting lead, and if there's a fire in your house, if you have panels on your house or in a solar array, the glass melts onto the cadmium telluride and it's locked in, it's not released. This person named Ms. Galland did not go into detail about gallium arsenide other than to say it is only used in small quantities on satellites and concentrated solar power systems due to the expense. Both of these are very expensive, so gallium arsenide thin film panels are on the satellites up there that give you your TV and spy on you and all that. Luke told me this afternoon that cadmium telluride panels can't be used in a harsh climate. They're not as durable as silicon-based panels, so they would not be an option for this solar array. I also found somewhere, but can only quote to you about this, let me stop for a second. There is less toxic metals and rare earths in solar panels than there are in your flat screen TV, your cell phone, and your computer, which are in your living room in your house. And they're locked just as you hold your cell phone up, but you're not poisoning yourself because it's locked inside the cell phone. So the toxic metals issue, I think we can set aside. That's what I'm saying. So that's, as far as recycling, this is a thing about recycling. We have solar panel product that's still performing to standard from 1978. That's 37 years. So we don't have a big stream of recycling, and there just isn't enough to recycle. But tellurium and cadmium, these are like very expensive, gallium, and they're very expensive, so there's a lot of recycling legislation, and I don't think we need to worry about that. That's me talking again. Anybody wants to review all this in a periodic table and talk about, how photons turn into electrons? I'm not a particle physicist, but I could talk to you about it at the level of my understanding. My next number 6 was going to be a short presentation on the benefits of the proposed solar array, but the proposed solar array has been changed as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, and Ralph covered it pretty well. I believe if we do end up with a 150 kilowatt array, there would be nothing for the town of Pownal or the elementary school to act as off-takers. So, I don't know. Number 7 was going to be Ralph giving a short presentation on the requirements of the Vermont Public Service Board Certificate of Public Good permitting process, but that's for an over 150 kilowatt array. When you have 150 or lower, it's called a streamlined permitting process. Do you have any comments about the smaller permitting?
Well,
Or these,
there's certain things I can say that apply across the board in terms of whether it's 15, 150, or 500 kilowatts. And if you'd like me to cover some of the points, I will anyway. Today, I can tell you where the legislation is and the rules that explain all of this in black and white. Net metering is explained in what's called Title 30 Vermont Statutes 219A. And that was updated last April by Act 99, of the legislature. So Act 99 is now reflected, right away it was reflected in Section 219. So there's 219, which basically talks about net metering, group net metering, the incentives, the adder, lots of definitions and so forth. And then the other piece is, so how does the permitting work? The permitting is explained in something called it's called Title 30 Vermont Statutes, Section 248. And Section 248 is legislation that basically governs how telecommunications infrastructure and energy infrastructure get permits in the state of Vermont. There's another rule, it's a Public Service Board rule, called Rule 5.100. And what Rule 5.100 basically does is get into the specifics of how permits can be applied for and evaluated and issued in accordance with Section 248. And what it basically is, Rule 5.100 is a kind of simplified or streamlined process for group net metering permitting that creates a number of exceptions to Section 248. Because the thing about Section 248 is that, you know, God forbid somebody wanted to come and build a nuclear plant in Vermont, or wanted to build a hydroelectric dam, or a 30 megawatt biomass plant, you know, something on a much larger sort of industrial or utility scale. That would also have to go through Section 248. But because, in particular, solar under group net metering only gets up to 500 kilowatts, there's some simplifications that basically allow you to skip certain sections of Section 248 for group net metering, group net metered permitting. The problem is that when I was getting ready for tonight's meeting, I was focusing on 500 kilowatts. So I wasn't going down below the 150 level and getting into the intricacies of those. And, you know, I was basically juggling about 150 pages of statute, which wasn't the easiest thing to do on an afternoon that just kept getting warmer and warmer in my office. But, so I'm not really prepared to get into a lot of the specifics of how things work up to 150 kilowatts. I can't tell you exactly how that's simpler. One of the things I do know is that an array that's at 150 kilowatts or less gets a quicker processing with the Public Service Board. But I think, and I'm just going to go over a couple of points here, I'm pretty sure that whether it's 150 or 500 kilowatts, the same points are considered, and the same state agencies are given an opportunity to review the permit application, you know, regardless of the size. These apparently are the same in Act 250, but under Section 248, including smaller arrays, the following criteria or following areas have to be taken into consideration: stability and reliability, orderly development, environmental considerations, outstanding resource waters, headwaters, waste disposal, floodways, streams, shorelines, wetlands, soil erosion, traffic, aesthetics, historic sites, and natural areas, necessary wildlife habitat, and public facilities. And what I can say is that this is where I guess my approach differs slightly from Ray's, in that all these issues that have to do with hazards, with contamination, with fire, with radiation, with noise, fall within these categories. And the real brain trust in Vermont for looking at those kinds of issues and deciding whether or not they have merit in a particular application falls to the Public Service Board. And what the Public Service Board does when they receive a permit application is they hand over the permit application along with any kinds of what are called pre-file testimony that the applicant has collected from, you know, anybody it wants to get testimony from, and then also there's a specific list of other parties that have standing and are also allowed to review the application and file their comments. And that's abutting neighbors, the local select board, the local planning commission, the regional planning commission, the Agency of Natural Resources, and the Department of Public Service. They are all automatically given copies of the permit application. They have opportunities to comment, and then at another step further down the process, the Public Service Board asks each of the state agencies, each of the relevant state agencies, including transportation and so on and so forth, to weigh in if their technical experts believe that any of those topics that I just mentioned, involve any kind of significant hazards or risks, and the other thing I want to just finish by saying is that the permitting process that I just described, all those numbers and alphabet soup and so forth, the particular kind of permit that's issued for energy infrastructure is called a certificate of public good. It's not called a certificate of private good or a certificate of private benefit that gives some private operator a license to make money. It really is a certificate of public good that looks at what is being proposed. Might be commercial, might be nonprofit, might be state-run, that's irrelevant, but it looks at the infrastructure that's being proposed and asks, is this going to serve the public good? So that is front and foremost in the entire process that results in whether or not a certificate of public good is issued. And then that's about all I can say now, because I'd have to go back and look at, you can look at them too, it's all online. Look at what Section 219, Section 248, and Rule 5.100 say about solar arrays up to 150 kilowatts. And we'll all be on the same page, because that's exactly the legislation that governs anything that we do.
Thank you, Ralph. Are there any comments by any of the other board members at this point?
That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to, anybody that wants to read the minutes of the March 9th public hearing we had and the April 6th board or monthly meeting, welcome to, but it was my mistake to not ask people, get your chance. It was my mistake to not ask people to identify themselves and spell their names, so that our secretary, Cindy, was hamstrung and just didn't know who was saying what. So at the beginning of your statement, I'm now going to open the agenda number 8, public comment accepted from meeting attendees relating to income proposal alternatives to potential income to PFD number 2 resulting from solar array rental and electricity bill reduction. But I'd like to ask you to start by telling your name and spelling it so Cindy can attribute and she'll do her best to summarize. So, Steve McKay.
Thank you. My name is Steve McKay, MCCAY. Last meeting I was asked to bring back hard facts and to address what could be done about some of the potential financial issues that the board was facing. I developed this package. We've developed this package to address some of the things that I see from a business perspective. I need to make sure that the board understands that I'm not trying to in any way place blame or point fingers at anyone in particular. I've evaluated this from a business aspect. It's what I do for my profession, and I think that I've found some valuable cuts that you guys could make that I think would help out everyone. So the first sort of went into the purpose, but I'll make this as quick as possible. The three things that I found right away were refinancing the bond, raising water bills marginally, and evaluating the operating expenses. The last slide has a page to identify the risks and the conclusion to wrap up. As I said, I'm not trying to tell anyone that they're doing a bad job or not managing your municipality the way that you feel that it should be run. This is just from a pure business perspective. So I spoke with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. The information you provided me didn't give me the interest rates. What I did was I calculated the monthly payments, the semi-annual payments that are being made, and I multiplied that out by the number of years that are left on the bond from the initial document that you gave me of when it started.
I'm sorry, did you contact the USDA?
I
gave you
did.
the name of the guy and he wouldn't tell you the rate of the...
Well, USDA couldn't refinance, so you had to go to the municipal bond bank, which was the only people that will refinance the bonds. USDA, it was sort of a dead road, but I didn't need it because I have all the calculations, from the other variables that you did give me. So currently, paying about $13K semi-annually. The interest rate, it's all approximate because this was just calculated using a table that developed with the end payments being in 2027. So I've estimated that at the current payments, the town has 245K remaining. So the rules are with a bond that you can refinance up to 40 years. The current bond that you guys have is the term is 30 years. With 14 years left, you guys can refinance at a 20-year rate or at a 20-year duration. And the interest rate would be approximately 0.35 or 0.34% lower, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is when you're talking about $250,000. So this total savings, if you guys will refinance that, could save you $9,300 a year, right off the bat with just refinancing.
Yeah, but may I respond to that? It extends the years by, was it 6? I mean,
Yes.
we owe for 13 more years, 2015, so we would be...
It's sort of like
extending it.
refinancing anything else, right? That's the reason that you refinance something, because you want to be able to cut down your payments because you guys are looking for ways to generate revenue.
Well, the issue is at 2027, we're going to have a 30-year-old system.
It's true.
And
And a 30-year-old
it's supposed to
system-
have a 30-year, supposed to have a 30-year life.
Well, that's why they make the bonds for 40 years, because that's why they make the duration of that period, because the system is supposed to last not only the 30 years. I mean, I would hope that at the 30-year point, we don't have to rip it up and make a new system. But another 6 years, I mean, the 6 years gets you what you were looking for, right? It gets you down to create more revenue, to not have to go and to be in the red, right? Which was what I thought they were trying to get to.
Sounds good, and I'm sure the bond would like to discuss that. I mean, the board would like to discuss it further. That sounds positive, although I don't like the idea of just off the top and in a discussion here of extending beyond the 30-year period.
So
But
if you
on the
want
other
to-
hand, when we get to 30 years, I doubt we're gonna stop charging water bills,
Absolutely. And if you want it, I mean, that's not a solid number, right? They'll let you refinance for 17, 18 years. If you wanted to have the information of the person that I talked to, I can get you that. I can also send you the amortization tables that I made up so that you can see where the data is actually coming from.
Very helpful, thank you.
So the second thing is increasing rates. A $5 a quarter increase rates. I know that that's not the optimal thing to do, but $5 a quarter would generate, almost $3,000 a year. So, I mean, right off the bat, you know, there are things that can be done. Again, from a business perspective, I know that there are probably some people in the room that obviously don't want the rates raised, and that's a negative thing, but from our perspective, a $5 a quarter raise would offset the need for this field across the street.
May I comment on that, please?
Absolutely.
I'm doing a lot of the talking, and if any of the other board members, this board of 5 people didn't say, well, let's just poke a stick in the eye of the people of Pownal and propose a solar array. This board started from the point of seeing quarter by quarter people struggling to pay the $115 a quarter. We were looking for other sources of income so we wouldn't have to increase the rates. I think if this whole solar thing goes away, we'll have to increase the rates more than $5. I mean, this, you look at today's treasurer's report. Ending balance, $441.62. So the way we're going, we'll make enough to meet the next bond payment. But this whole solar array thing was to try to avoid increasing the rates. Find another way for the Pownal Fire District Number 2 to make money using this asset, this 5-acre parcel.
I don't know the
You have
rates.
to please identify.
Michelle Peckrell, Pekrol. When was the last time the rates were raised?
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And it was the first time in 11 years. We raised it from 100 to 115, and we had a very helpful advisor from a service called RECAP Solutions. He said you really ought to raise it to 125 so you can build up your equity. And we felt bad about raising it to 115, you
I
know.
understand, but there's always cost of living increases every year if you rent an apartment or something like that, so rates should have been going up from 11 years back. So just because the rates weren't raised back then and then you raise it a little bit, well, you know, this will maybe catch people up to where the rates actually should be. Especially because they're getting unlimited water. I mean, if they were on a meter, their bills would be much higher.
We don't know that.
You really don't know that
We don't
because
know.
most places with meters have many more users, such as Hoosick Falls, for instance. Their quarterly average bill, but you know, you're right, it depends on the meter. We have a rather small water system with little fixed costs and not a lot of payers. So, you know, we have 143 residential units.
Is Rosemary Pelletier,
Thank you very much.
Pelletier, I never mind her. In line with that, I know the water has to be pumped to houses, it serves a geographical area, right?
Yes.
Is-
It serves the old Lewis Water Company area.
What?
There's a water company run by Lewis, he's here tonight,
Okay.
and he could no longer maintain it, and the state decided it needs to be fixed.
Okay.
So we were forced to
This
do
is
this.
this is a map of Pownal. This line is, anybody within this line can hook up to this system. Yes.
And I guess my question is,
How many left?
are there a number of people who are not hooked up to the system that could become members and who would benefit from being members and would add to your regular income, or do they not exist? And the other thing might be it's too expensive to hook them on, that it offsets any gain that you make.
The main water pipe has about 100 pounds of pressure. To hook into that water pipe, you have to be a licensed plumber with a bond for when you blow up the pipe and you get a, you know, Old Faithful type fountain. So it's estimated that it costs about $1,500 to hook a new line plus you have to pay to your house and the underline and the hooking up of the house. We just, Brady Rose bought the old Lillian Wilson house, and the line was all clogged in, so he had to dig it up in the winter time with the 7-foot deep frost. I'm sure that wasn't cheap, but when this water system was made, if you agreed to hook up, they hooked you up for no charge, but now you have to pay
Okay.
at least $2,000.
Most people do from the board, that comes from the person.
Person, right.
Most people do. Yeah, there are some people with wells that there aren't many enough. I would say it's a small number.
Probably.
Okay, so just can I keep, are there more
Well,
questions?
possibly.
Is that sound right?
Well,
Can I say something because my name is Karen Barney, B-A-R-N-E-Y. I just wanted to know, do you know how many apartment houses that you have that they only pay like only one?
No, they all pay by residential units.
Each apartment's residential.
So if an apartment house has 3 apartments in it, they pay 3 bills, and they charge their tenants.
Okay, what about any kind of business? Do they pay more because they're a
The only
business?
business we have is Gallivan, and they just have water service, like to flush their toilets and drink
What
the
about
water.
the daycare? There's a daycare business.
The daycare business is now up by the elementary school,
No.
and that has been made into 3 apartments, and they pay 3 residential
No.
units.
The daycare on 346.
you're talking about ours, Nichols?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
You
Well,
wanna
no,
know how
I
many
just,
people live in my house?
no, I just,
Every one of them's last name is Nichols.
I don't care, I'm just asking the question, you don't have to get up and out of shape.
I don't have a registered daycare anymore. I take care of my
I'm just
great
asking a
grandkids.
question, because it's considered a business, it's a business, I'm just asking the question. Please don't get all upset because I asked a question.
The water is not metered, and I assume it's a customary used business in the home. We're not, that doesn't,
You probably.
speaking for the board, I'm not worried about that.
Okay, Jim Winchester, and you know, a lot of things, you need more customers. And we talk about this a lot on the planning board, and most of you will tell that we need some senior citizen housing in 4 or 5 locations around town. And this would add nicely to your customers. We have a good water system, we have an excellent sewer system. We're just not promoting and trying to find out, we're not hooking up with the shires who did this in Bennington well. We're in the process of doing this, and by the way, I have a business and I have your water. And I love it,
I'm sorry
and I want to keep it
overlooked.
at a good price. But we need to increase the volume. Your system is good. When you look at the West Coast, in Texas and some of those places, we're the luckiest people in the world to have good water.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's a disaster out there. We should not get into an argument where we're going to shoot each other. Come away with bad feelings.
I just asked a question.
No. Listen, I'm excited by this to a point that the biomass people were down there, they were giants, they had plenty of money, and there was some people in this town that didn't want it. Looked like the Agency of Natural Resources, which controls you guys. You guys have rules and regulations. You have to test your water. I mean, this is like just some simple place. You have a system that you're controlled by. Public Service Board, we felt, was going to tell us that we could have a biomass plant down there. And guess what? We don't. Hang in there. But we do need to move on. The planning board is working very hard on this to try and increase lots of things. And we're going to hold some public hearings, just a pitch, but please, be involved. We're going to write a new town plan here. It's extremely obsolete. It's pathetic. We saw this, we're trying to get something going down the racetrack. It's written before we had sewer, your water, and when we come up with some meetings, please attend and voice yourselves.
How do we find that out?
They'll be posted.
I'd just like to follow up with Miss Barney over there too. And for people that were gonna use excessive water, like Gallivan landscaping and thing like that, what we did do, we set one specific fire hydrant aside that has a meter on it.
Okay,
And they pay if somebody was gonna say fill a pool off of that hydrant, or they were gonna use the water for irrigation purposes for their business or something, where they're using very large quantities, they would pay per gallon.
It's called our
Okay.
commercial water.
Well, I was just curious.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to give you information.
Yeah,
I'm not giving you a hard time.
No, oh, please don't.
No, no, no. No, I'm just trying to fill you in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And another thing on that too, I just wondered, do you still have a understanding with the fire department that if they will go and do the hydrants for you?
No, they have, Alex, why don't you address that, would you please?
Well, basically what it boils down to is not just Pownal, but also Bennington Fire Department as well have changed insurance companies. They feel it is a unnecessary risk to flush the hydrants and use the hydrants to purchase water to fill pools and stuff like that, so therefore we don't have anybody to do it for us, it's up to us.
So you would have to hire like somebody like Rogers, the one there, that Mike Rogers, and you want.
You need somebody who has a tanker, because you can't just flush everywhere it goes into people's yards.
Right.
So that was what the utility of the fire company, they could fill, they're flushing it and they're filling a tanker, but they have withdrawn that service. We asked the Pownal Center Fire Company, they said no. We asked the Bennington, Terry Morse was very helpful, he's the head of the Bennington Water, and he said, they won't do it for us either, so it's a new world and we don't quite know how to
So
deal
that'll
with it.
be another expense then?
Absolutely. Additional expense to hire somebody with a tanker.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we hear the rest of Steve's
Yes.
proposal?
Yep.
Let's go back to Steve's statement, okay, is that all right? Okay with me, go ahead.
Thank you. The next slide is reducing the operating expenses. After evaluating the numbers from 2013, 2014, and the initial, or the first part of 2015, I noticed a trend of operating expenses that were just jumping out at me as red flags. The first is the stipends could be reduced for you guys by 1/3. It's not, taking, I know you guys put your time in and, volunteer, it's a hard thing to do, but by taking, 1/3 of that stipend from $30 to $20, that could be $600 a year. Reducing the amount of free water that the board gets by half a year. So again, I know that you guys give your time and your talents for this, but half a year of paying and half a year free could increase by $1,200 a year. The secretary and the treasury fee seem to be constant throughout. It seems that there would be fluctuations in that, so there would be higher number of hours that you spent on billing months, or in the summertime when people are filling pools and there's things that you have to do. I understand, but there seems to be a flat line of basically like a salary, and by changing this to whatever price it is that you guys determine for an hourly wage, and then documenting the hours, it could save up to $1,200 a year if you document the slow months, because there should be some type of fluctuation in the way that the treasurer and the secretary's responsibilities are per month. In 2014, just for numbers, it was 1/6 of the operating expense, which is for any type of management. I would in my business we estimate anywhere from 8 to 10% of oversight for the P&O or the management of the program itself. So the next slide, more reductions in the operating expenses, is the postage. Purchasing a domain, I know we've talked about this before, and I didn't want to beat a dead horse, but there are people that own computers, and there are people that would be interested in the web pay. I understand that there are also people that wouldn't. So what I did was I calculated a 50% decrease in the postage and estimated in the $50 to purchase the domain and to set it up. And I'd be willing to help you guys out with that. I could save you $150 a year if that's something that you guys would be interested in. Now the operator, I couldn't put a value on, and I tried. I Googled, I researched some things, but you know, almost half your budget is getting cut up in operating expenses by this operator. So along the same lines of management, I'm sure that if his tasks were evaluated, they have to fluctuate. They would think they would have to be on some type of, you know, peak demand, you know, and then decrease in the fluctuation. And it's not. It's like $900 and something a month for an operator. I'm sure you guys know what he does, and I'm sure that he does a great job at it. But that might be something to evaluate, to look at what he's actually doing in that month, and then pay him for his actual service, not just a flat line across. And I didn't put an estimate on that. I did include it in here, but it's something to think about. And I didn't include it in my final numbers either. So
I just want to make a comment about that.
Absolutely.
Licensed water system operators are very thin on the ground in Vermont.
Go to school.
Sure. Our operator is Burr Snow. He wasn't able to be here tonight because he had a previous commitment, but if anyone is interested, Alex, who helps him out, will give you, he said, give him my email, give him my phone, and I'll be glad to talk to anybody. It's a complicated license to win.
And I'm sure
It's a requirement of so, could you identify yourself, please?
Sharon Nichols, and I see HLOS. I just have a question. It says operator, so Snow's the operator,
Yes,
so he gets $930 a month.
yes.
Alex, what do you get paid for going down there and doing, do you get paid?
Yeah, I get paid by Burr.
He pays you.
Out of his salary.
Out of his salary.
Okay, that's.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, whopping $20 a day.
No, it's just, it never said who the operator was.
I know.
So, I mean, if we're not paying the operator, we're not paying you, we're paying Mr. Snow.
Right.
And then Mr. Snow pays you.
So I'm sure you're very familiar with whatever it is that you guys do. And that's just something to think about. Like I said, I didn't include it in the numbers, but if there's a way that you could, you know, evaluate that from a business perspective, and if he's really performing the tasks to be worthy of the financial amount that he's receiving, then, you know, that's obviously something I don't know about. I didn't add it here, but it's something to think about. So for consolidated savings, you know, to refinance the bond, the small $5 rate increase, the reducing stipends, the half a year of free water instead of full year, the hourly wage for the admin, or the treasurer and secretary, and the web bill pay comes out to over $15,000, which is double of what the original plan was. Now that the plan has gone down to 4, I mean, we're almost talking about, you know, 3 or 4 times the amount of money here. So the last slide was when everything was close to the well. I believe since that plan can't move forward with the legislative that you guys have stated in the beginning of the meeting, I mean, the risks are, I understand, Mr. Bub, that you have, you know, found the research and done the same type of research that we've been doing, and thank you for doing that and bringing that to us. We have also found, you know, counteracting material, because there always is. So we just still want to reiterate the risk of this 20-year project on top of the well for the town. The second part was our property values around it, if we didn't want to be part of the experiment and we wanted to leave or get our own well. You know, there's a lot of people around that area that will lose a lot of money from the investments that they made, including myself. So you asked me to come last week or last month. I had all those ideas for fundraising. I've had, you know, the idea is we went down a different path. You've asked me to come back with hard financial numbers, provide you with this package, and this says double. It's tripled, quadrupled the amount of the solar field.
It doesn't mean all these things are gonna work, just because you've written them down.
Yeah, they're speculative. We appreciate your effort and what you presented us. We will definitely review a lot of it, but a lot of it's speculative with regards to refinancing the bond, speculative.
Oh, there's no speculation in any of that, sir.
Okay,
There's
so
not.
you,
I have done it. I have the people. They're all lined up, ready to go. The interest rate is 3.5. You can look it up on the internet. There's no speculations whatsoever. For 20 years, it's been calculated. I'll send you the amortization schedule. There's absolutely no speculation. And with in regards to the other operating expenses, there's no speculation. That was taken from numbers. I calculated the numbers based on the information that was provided by the board. I generated what a potential decrease would be. I calculated those numbers on the average of what it's been throughout the year, and these are the numbers that come from those numbers. So there's absolutely no speculation in any
so
of
do you know
that.
how many hours that each one of us puts in all the time?
I just think
I
the
don't-
board thanks you very much for your contribution.
Yeah, I don't know that, but that wasn't in there.
Well, with regards to the secretary and the treasurer,
That's why I put an estimated time, because there has to be some fluctuation, and I stated at the beginning that I'm not, this number could be wrong, and if the secretary is, or the treasurer is fulfilling, you know, a $400 a month salary, which is 10 hours a week at $10 an hour, and this is right, then wipe the 12 off the table, and we're still at 14.2, right? I mean, that's one small part of all of this. That's why I presented all of these things, so that if you had any problems with any of the information that I put in there, you can pick and choose what you want and still get to the number where you believe it'll take you out of the red. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve, for the effort.
The Cindy Leonard, the secretary treasurer, does two jobs. One job is to keep the books, to deposit the money, to balance and reconcile and all of that. And for that, she's paid $175 a month. She also takes the notes, prepares, mails out the bills, and does copying and all that. Envelopes. She's also paid $175 a month. On a billing month, a quarterly billing month, she gets an extra $50 for the extra time. So some months her two jobs add up to $350, and other months they add up to $400. So that's the arrangement.
Melissa Collins, COLLINS. I'm just wondering, where in the bylaws does it say that, why, there's only supposed to be 3 people on the board? And where does it say that you get free water? Does everybody here get free water? And that would, I'm just curious as to those 2 questions.
Well, the bylaws don't go specifically, and the bylaws are amended. There are 5 board members.
The one you sent me was, there were 3.
I'm glad you asked. I'm going to get out the bylaws.
Okay, well, can I
Thank you
have
very
my
much.
copy as well?
I think, I just want to make a comment here. We can save a lot of money if we don't pay anybody anything. That saves a lot of money, but it sure does cut down on people willing to do anything. So
But it's a volunteer board, isn't it?
That's what we.
there are limits.
We find how to get a quorum sometimes. If you had 3, how would you get a quorum?
You wouldn't be able
That's
to.
true.
You wouldn't be able to. The
The quorum is, it's addressed in the bylaws.
No, I'm not saying, but we have 9, sometimes we have a hard time getting quorum. 7 is, you don't get it, it's trying to get a meeting with enough people.
But it's okay that there's more, but it's when they get free water that
Okay,
there's
that's another issue.
Right, so it's not that there's more, it's that everybody gets free water even though it only says 3. And that's a big savings every year.
Can I ask a question about how many deadbeats you have?
No, it's,
Okay, it's off limits. Okay.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Yeah, we can't be saying that.
You know, they're just shut off. If they don't pay, they get shut off.
Okay.
So as far as deadbeats go, if they don't pay, their water's shut off. So there's nobody getting water without
I've heard
paying, without paying the
I've heard
bill.
that's a bigger issue than sometimes we make, so you
Yep.
make a good point.
Yep.
No question.
Have you shut off anybody's water lately?
Yes. It's a regular, it's a monthly, quarterly occurrence.
Quarterly occurrence.
And I can tell you probably right where you do it too.
Well,
Yeah, we're not gonna comment on that.
I'm not gonna say.
Neither are we.
We're getting off track, it was a foolish question.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the Article 8, Operating Rules and Regulations. The Prudential Committee shall establish rules and regulations that shall govern the administration, operation, and maintenance of the water system. Said rules and regulations to become effective upon a majority vote of the Prudential Committee. Bylaws of the fire district may be amended, added to, or repealed by a vote of at least 2/3 of the fire district members present at a special meeting convened for this purpose and at which a quorum is present. The gist of it is that the 5-member board has the power to make decisions in the best interests of the 146
When did it become
members.
5? When? How long has it been 5?
Was 4 years ago. 4 years ago when Walt and Doug joined the board. It's in the minutes of that.
That was sent out in the bills, if anybody wanted to come down. Walt and I chose to
That's not what
come.
I asked, I just asked.
No, I just explained to you what happened.
Because we got the minutes from 2013 and we couldn't find anything, so we just asked them.
This would be 2011, I think.
It's been a while.
Can I ask where in the bylaws does it say about the free water?
May I want to also say that we're not perfect. This is not the board of directors of IBM. We're doing our best here.
I know, but where in the bylaws does it say about the free water? I'm just curious about the
It
free water.
doesn't say that. It was a vote of the
But with
Prudential
the
board.
current financial situation, wouldn't you choose to pay your bill to help with
At
that?
least half, like as was suggested.
Thank you for the suggestion.
I'd like to comment on Ray, probably with the amount of hours Ray puts in, and other folks maybe not quite as much on the board, but Ray's probably making about 10 cents an hour with the amount of time he puts in and gets a stipend and free water. That's phenomenal to me, to just even, just the efforts that he's put in for all this stuff. His hours go way beyond the other
The
board
efforts
members.
are appreciated.
But it's just, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's not a
It's a
question.
volunteer, but I mean,
No, the
it's a business
efforts
that's
are
trying to be run
absolutely
here.
appreciated.
It's really a business.
And if
That's
that
not-
It's not a
business-
fire department or rescue squad, it's more of a business, it's a whole different
it's a
situation.
corporation. And that should be compensated, right? And you guys can work together on the
Yeah, I
way
understand,
that
yeah.
when somebody puts in the hours, then they get the raise, right? So maybe you guys talk about, if Ray is putting in at 10 cents an hour and everybody else isn't, then maybe Ray gets, 3/4 for free, or, I mean, you gotta find a way to
Come on,
decrease.
Steve. We're not gonna do it that way. We're gonna,
I'm sorry, I just have to say this. I have
Would
this
you
slogan up
please
the whole time.
identify
My name is
yourself?
Donna Lozon. You volunteer to sit on the board, right? And for that, you get a $30 stipend. I too, I used to sit on the Whitford board. I got $15 or $20. So, yes, you guys are volunteering your time, but isn't that what the stipend is for? I don't understand how you can also say that you should get free water while you're shutting off people who can't pay, and then you're looking at us asking to come up with alternatives. The people of this town voted for the water in the first place,
No,
many years ago.
No.
We didn't really ask you, you volunteered. We didn't ask you to come up with anything. You volunteered, and we thank you very much for that.
And that's how you treat
You
the
did.
people of this town. We thank you very much.
You asked by saying, bring us something, and we will reconsider the solar plant that we had a problem with. You did ask, sir.
We never said we'd reconsider the solar plant.
It's not you. You said if we could find us $7,500, we would reconsider the solar plant.
I don't.
You can go watch.
Well, it is, it's on the video.
I came up with 15.
He doubled the amount. It's not us against you, it's actually helping. It's money. It's there, he's showing you it.
Or you don't have to take my recommendation and take what I made and make it your own then, if that's what you choose to do.
Right, this was just presented to us tonight.
Absolutely.
So by any type of common courtesy, you would
Absolutely.
maybe give us the opportunity, like I said, we appreciate it, we thank you. We're gonna review it and see what we can work with out of this.
And I'll send
All
you
right,
that
so I mean, there's
information.
nothing we can say, yeah, we're gonna do everything on here right now. I mean, that would be totally incompetent and stupid. You know what I mean?
I would like to hear, though, I did like to hear that instead of, well, you never asked for it, you never said that you were gonna reconsider, you never said anything. That to me is the respect that I feel I deserve for creating that, because you did ask for it. We have it on video, right? So thank you for that, I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
you're welcome.
But you know, Mr. Basso said it very well, and Al said, it's a moving target. Montpelier could change the whole game, we're all wasting our time here.
Well,
One move right or left with those
already
folks up
changed
there, the whole scheme blows up, reset doesn't do anything. So we're having an argument here, I hope it's just a nice discussion,
Yeah,
but I mean, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh his way, it's up in Montpelier. You can blow the whole thing up tomorrow. And there's a man that represents us, and he says, I don't know as much as this gentleman. So, how do you feel, guys? We're now getting at each other's throats a little bit, and somebody is gonna take the whole table and pull it off from under us, in Montpelier.
They've already changed the game already in 24 hours.
Appreciate it.
That's right.
Here we are. I hope we all leave here friends tonight. At least we had a discussion.
well, no, we appreciate everybody coming. I mean, and then another thing I just wanna throw out there too, is if we'd have more participation at our monthly meetings,
Right.
people would have a gist as to what's going on day, month by month by month, rather than never showing up until something like this. Then all of a sudden, everybody's coming in here and they got their hair up on their back. And, you know, a lot of your things that you address in here, if you actually, and I'm not saying this derogatory, but I'm saying if you were here, if you're here all the time and you see how things work and see what the board does and see the whole process of how things go, and provide you people a better understanding. And I'm not saying we're perfect, and nobody is. Anybody that says they are is a liar. So, you know, I'm just saying,
No, the other thing, if you had a two-member board and nobody shows up, one guy could get a trip to Las Vegas every week. I mean, there's no quorum, but one guy shows up, we see it all the time in the region. Three people show up, you can do anything you want.
yeah.
So at least you folks have 5 people.
Basically, kind of all for the community, because, I mean, I live here, but I don't know of all the different meetings and things like that. So is there, and this might be something with the planning board, with the website, maybe if there's a central location for all different meetings, whether it's planning board, the select board, the water board, the meeting about the concert that you and I talked about, that I heard about Berkeley, I had no idea about that. I mean, I would have gone and, you know, brought my support for that. So maybe that's something that,
We
and
have a
also have the
website coming.
agendas listed so people know.
The town has a website
Coming,
It's in the
okay, so, all
process.
right, yeah, that's what I say, because that would help people to be able to bring their voices and help, and maybe like at a meeting, you're like, hey, we need some volunteers to do this, you know, and put that on your agenda, and then people can show up to see, like with the green up thing that was
Right.
going on.
Yeah, it'll be a much better vehicle for community.
Okay, I think that would help
And I
everybody.
think minutes of meetings will also
That
help.
would help.
Just one more time, I'd like to say again that the board is responsible to the 146 residential units responsible, and try to act in the best interest of all of the water users of the system. Just to go back to something you said, Jimmy, when Nelson Brownell attended the meeting on March 9th, he said, well, I get you a lot of water customers. And he said, North Pownal, they voted down a water system, but they're all complaining their water isn't that good. And it's like, we are not gonna float a bond to run a pipe 2 miles down Route 346 to then get $115 a quarter, you know? We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna indebt this just to get more customers, which we then have a whole lot more pipe to worry about. I mean, if anybody wants to join within our defined area, that'd be great. But beyond that, this board has no interest in expanding our infrastructure to add more.
Was there anything for commercial
Customers.
sales? I know you guys talked about commercial sales before.
You should call Billy Kai.
Do what?
We get this. We can't sell it for water because
It's too hard.
we have to chlorinate because of certain reasons part of the year. So we can't, so Vermont Pure and other drinking water systems aren't interested. We got this crazy guy named Billy Kai who is the monopolist of filling swimming pools in this, from Stockbridge to Pownal to New York State. He has 3 phones. You call him, the phones they're all, I'm sorry, mailbox full, mailbox full. Every once in a while he'll call back, hey, I saw you called me, you know, and then he talks. He's a dead end. So far, I don't know, it's swimming pool season again, that was last year. Galavan has said they would buy water, they haven't bought any yet, because they do hydro seeding and they fill up a thing. That's been a dead end so far.
They have a great well. They have a great well. That was our old fire department. Hey, let me challenge you, some people in here. This
Well,
piece of action,
you know
this
what?
piece of action down there by Mac Molding, I'd like to see a farmer's market started down there. And then in the news Mac Molding's parking lot that you guys were at the other night.
That'd be nice.
That's an interesting thing. There's a lot of things we can do. This is a town that's coming up.
Well, TAM Incorporated,
Yep.
the guy that's working on it called me and said, hey, we were thinking of hooking into your water system. At first, I thought they'd have to burrow under the railroad tracks, and then I realized they could come in from the Orchard Street
Sure.
across there. But then I said, look, I know you guys have a 100-gallon-a-minute well. And he said, well, it doesn't work. And I said, it's in the same aquifer, get a well driller. They haven't called back, so I guess I did us,
Right next door at the
us out of a
racetrack. They got the
customer,
best
but-
water system in the whole damn state.
you know. On the other hand, they're gonna be washing something in there, you know? I don't really wanna
Scrub
get, I don't know what they're gonna do, but they've got their own, so
They've got a good well there. The fire department has a good well, and the racetrack has a fabulous well.
yeah.
I mean, we
100
have
gallons a
water.
minute. In fact, the reason that the geologists know that this clay bed is around all over the area is that every well that's drilled, the well driller has to submit a report of, you know, I went down 5 feet, I found this, I went down 10 feet, I found this. So the geologists don't just look at the wells they drilled for our system, they're looking at all the wells. And the racetrack well, I have it here, you know, was drilled in 1962, and it says hard pack from 12 feet to 52 feet in an aquifer. So it, you know, wasn't as sophisticated as when Lincoln applied geology, but all the wells around here have this clay, 2 clay beds protecting the lower aquifer. And Lincoln applied geology drilled a well down to the middle aquifer to see if anything in their 4-day pump test would affect the middle aquifer. And no, it didn't. The well didn't change. The 32-foot deep well didn't change when they pumped continuously 96 hours. This is very, this is a very special.
1962, we put a space station up there. Put a man on the moon.
Yes.
Rebecca Dragon, DRA-JUN. So the geology is really interesting. I'm wondering if it's that impermeable that like nothing can go down and get down into that aquifer. Are you guys open to using that great open space in other ways? Because I can think of 1,000 great things you could do on that big open field. Is there any reason why, since it's so impermeable, so non-destructible, could we have a farmer's market on it? Could we put greenhouses on it? Yeah.
Well, they're still gonna get, even though it's impermeable, we still have to go by all the USDA, the state regulations, the environmental regulations and stuff like that. So even though it's impermeable, there's still a lot of laws and precautions, because we did try to address farming on it, and then the fertilizers came up as being an issue.
I don't mean farming, I mean farmers market or something.
Right, but you said a bunch of things. I'm just telling you, that there's still a bunch of other agencies that have a say on what goes on there. I mean, thank goodness it's impermeable and this and that, but there's precautionary guidelines set up by all these different agencies just to make sure nothing happens.
Do you feel that those guidelines pretty much prohibit anything from happening there? Or, I mean, is this something, this is obviously something that we could research and see.
The point of this looking into a solar array is that it just sits there. It has one input, sunlight, it has one output, electricity. There's no moving parts. Once it's constructed, so it's a very passive use. We don't want a lot of vehicles near the well. We don't want
Why?
a lot of traffic.
I'm just curious why.
Well, liability is one issue.
Liability, okay.
Well, maintenance.
Maintenance to the
With
ground.
ruts and
The ground.
all that type of mud stuff, yeah.
Ron is on, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Ron.
You know what, I've been in the water business for years, been around a lot of well drillers, things like that. Well, I went to these water schools. 95% of the water comes from the rain cycle. How's it get down there if it's impermeable? It has to get down there. What I'm trying to say is, all right, they claim when they drill down through, they're drilling a 6-inch hole. That's all they're doing. I've seen a lot of, I've seen them clean that well down there. You know what they cleaned it with? Detergents. Barrels of it.
Which well are you referring to?
The town well. I was right down there when they cleaned it. It was 50 gallons a minute. It was all full of silt. In order to break that down, they put Tide and all these other different detergents. I said, what are you doing? The whole field is covered with soap. So but I said, but here, what I'm trying to say is, you got to have a 200 foot away from the well at a farm, supposedly, because of common water. Now, the ground is not impermeable. It does make it better if there is, a layer of clay or something. Who knows? That water got down there. It didn't come from down the center of the earth. That's Yellowstone.
It comes from Williamstown, actually.
No, it does not come
Well,
from. How do you know that?
Well,
There's no
because
way
I
you
talked
can
to...
know that. These geologists said that all the water in North Pownal came from the riverway. It all comes from the other side. There's a 100 gallon a minute well right there by the church. Waterway right through there. Like I said, I've been around this a long time. I'm not here to try to tell everybody, but I've seen a lot of this stuff. And I know that the ground, the water goes down through the ground. You get a rain out there, it don't sit on top. It goes down through. I've seen that field flooded. I was glad that they put the trench back in where it's supposed to be, rather than have that nasty water run all over the field. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
The information that I have, a lot of it was gathered when the biomass was thing, and I talked extensively with David DeChair, who's a geology professor at Williams College, whose specialty is this area.
I talked extensively to Gordon Gould in Hudson Yards. It's a 3-generation well drillers. And they go to meetings like we're having right here. National Water Well. I've been to some of them meetings. And like he told a lot of them drillers, look, you're going right by the water, guys. The water's in the gravel. The water ain't down in the rock. Look at the holes they drilled around here. If they knew where the water was, they would have drilled there first. They wouldn't have drilled over there behind where the electrician lives and places like that. They wouldn't have drilled over there and tried to get 10 gallons a minute. They got 50 over there. And then, like I said, they flooded it with soap suds. They supposedly got it up to 100. So, I mean, geologists, I've talked to geologists too. But I've also looked at places where you've got actual people who worked in the field. You know, people who drilled these holes. And they got a lot of experience too.
I'm glad to listen to anybody's experience. Thank you.
When will you guys be updating the source protection plan?
Well, maybe when this settles down. There's only so much we can do.
Is that something that you need help with, or is that something you guys can look at and deal with since it's overdue?
I don't have an answer for you right now. I think the source protection plan does need to be updated, and it's mostly somebody has to go to Lister, Barber, Schlesinger, compare the addresses, and get the new addresses. It's an odd little detail of the source protection plan. They want to know the names and addresses of all the people in the area in case there's a crisis, but there's no telephone numbers. So what are you supposed to do, write them all a letter? But that's all the requirement is, there's no telephone numbers, and these listers have no telephone numbers. We don't have telephone numbers, So, but that's one of the many volunteer projects that this board has to do, and sure, we would welcome to help. But can't make any commitments right now. Does anybody else have
I have one more question, please. Last time Ralph said he didn't know where the panels would come from or what they would be made out of. They could come from China or Germany. Has that changed at all?
Yeah, it's about the same. Panels are a global commodity, and they're made in Japan, China, Germany, Canada, the United States. In the past, we've had them from a number of different suppliers. Yingli, the Chinese one, Kim is another Chinese one. Canadian Solar is another
Are
example.
any of those the ones that are going bankrupt because of their panels breaking down?
Not that I've heard. But remember, that we don't even have a signed agreement.
I know, I'm just wondering if that was still the case.
And we would put this out to bid and go through the usual contractors we've worked with in the past and find out from them what's available. At that point, we'll make all information available that we possibly can, if we reach that point.
The panels that have the least rare earths and heavy metals in are called silicon wafer panels. And I just, in our conversation this afternoon at 4 o'clock, Luke said we wouldn't use cadmium tellurium panels, the thin film panels, because of the harsh weather conditions. It would be the silicon wafer panels, which have magnitudes fewer toxic materials than your computer, cell phone, and flat screen TV. They're more durable and more reliable, but there's no commitment. We're still in the proposal stage.
Well, I guess it's good though, is Steve's proposal that there's an alternative then to these at all.
The ones with gallium arsenide are on the space shuttle. Apparently gallium is wicked expensive, and so is tellurium, and there's only 900 metric tons a year mined or something.
I have a question, but I wanted to see if I could just email you the questions about the treasurer's report for March and April. Can I just email that question to you separately instead of here?
Sure.
Okay.
I want to thank you all. The board is now going to just review the minutes and redo a little bit of numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll adjourn. And we appreciate all your comments.
Thanks, Ray.
Sure. But it sounds to me like what I should do is...
May I just say one more thing? There's going to be no decision made for at least another month, because we got to wait for 2 weeks until the legislature comes down from on high and says what the setback is.
Do you know the date for the next meeting?
It's going to be
the first Monday next month.
Yeah, I think it's the 7th.
First Monday, the 7th, that's right. I have the number in my head.
Thanks.
Ray, good to see you.
And the commission.
Bye, Susan.
You do a very good job.
Aren't you glad this is a problem this week?
That was a
You did a very good job for it. Thank you. Thank you.
It's like anything. It's like, you gotta realize at some point, it's not everybody happy.
No.
You gotta like kind of, you know, do the best, as long as you know, within your side, doing the best you
What
can
I'm
do.
saying, I don't want to extend this on.
I
was gonna speak up and say that.
Good.
Well,
And that's gonna be hard to do.
Then I
You did a good job too.
Well, what's tough is like the people, a lot of people don't even know about it, and then the people that don't have any problem with it don't show up because they don't have no problem. It's just the ones that got a problem
I
with
want to
it.
build up our.
We
We just fixed one hydrant, we didn't replace it.
Oh, yeah, and that's the best, yeah, right.
Because I
I'm happy to share it with you.
And it's, and also we have to hire a frog man to like vacuum out. 5 years ago, it was 1,600, this year it was 2,800.
Oh, is it gonna be for
It's just
the?
everything.
Okay. See, I misunderstood, that's why I had time, he asked.
No, the tank.
Oh, that doesn't.
They had a video, and they went, frog man went down and he got the tank up
That's
and
on
see
that.
it.
Oh, God, don't go for that, because it's not.
But it's very specialized.
Thing is free money, but this is essentially like free license.
It's all gravel, it's not. The state gets after you, you gotta do so much all the time. Nine times, them don't realize.
No,
Screen TV.
That's the biggest problem, son, right
You
there.
know,
You're sitting there, computer all the time.
but you have to do our best.
You have a pipe blow apart.
A little bit of money.
Yeah, like whenever the road subsided, you know, it might, your son was like, it has to be the worst blizzard of the winter when I'm trying to build this winter.
There's a big landscape engineers and they're just figured out that.
Always in the middle of winter when I had to break.
Oh,
sure, right?
I remember you coming up and blocking off every rain, right?
Every day.
No matter what you did, it's still break again the next
No,
year.
that's just probably a simple amount, or even maybe worse.
You was changed the pipe finally.
Did you Okay, well, I just, nice.
Thank you very much, it was nice to talk with you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Well,
Not quite, we got it.
not quite. Does anybody have any questions on the April 6th minutes?
Want to do March first?
We're gonna go with April 6th first, then we're gonna do March 9th, then we're gonna do the treasurer's report, then we're gonna adjourn.
All right, I make a motion to accept them. In April.
Acceptable.
April 6th, all right, do I have a second? for
I'll
the-
second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Walt and a second from Doug. All in favor? Aye. Okay, how about the minutes of the March 9th public meeting? Have any questions about those minutes?
Well, I'll make a motion again to accept them.
We have a second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'm not finding my treasurer, my copy.
I had
Is there
it.
another copy of the treasurer? Thanks. I see, Cindy, that you put back that 3,475 into the sinking fund balance. I just want to know, is there anyone that still owes and is still shut off?
No,
Or is everybody paid up and been turned back on?
everybody's turned on, and the ones that had made an agreement are making the payments on.
Okay. So as of today, everybody is back on the system?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
I just want to make a note to Cindy. I don't know if you want to change this because we don't have Suburban anymore, it's HL. So I don't know if you just want to make a note to change that from now on because that'll always be 0 because we got a better deal
Yeah, I'll
with
take that
HL.
one off and put the
Yeah.
HL on.
Okay. I'm just too tired to ask you, Cindy, to go over the bank statements, but I'm gonna ask you if the bank statements and the checkbook are reconciled.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't have the one for, that was for March.
We're always gonna be a month
A month behind.
behind, but if you could prepare as I recall, in the back of the bank statement, you add in the new checks and, you know.
Yep.
So you can just bring us up to date in the future on that.
Yeah, the last one I had was March, so when I get April's, we'll have that for next time.
All right. I don't have anything else. Does anyone have anything else?
You gotta accept these.
Oh, may I hear a vote to accept the treasurer's report?
I'll make a motion.
Walt makes a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Second?
I'll second.
Alex seconds, all in favor? Aye. Treasurer's report is accepted. Is there any other business that any board member has to discuss? May I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Ryan motions to adjourn, a second?
I'll second.
Doug seconds, all in favor?
Aye. Adjourned.
We're done.
He's a throw to some of you.
All
I
right.
like that rubber hammer touch, that's great.
Yeah, well, I was gonna bring
When
my
I delivered mailings.
great uncle's tack hammer, but I brought this.
Bring the splitting wall.
That's right.